Welcome back to another episode of PropSutra with Balaji Rao. With over 30 years of experience across different areas of real estate, Mr. Balaji Rao has seen the industry evolve from every angle. At PropSutra, our goal is to provide meaningful insights into the industry through open dialogue and debate. In today's episode, we explore two very different types of housing: plotted development versus residential apartment. Both have their advantage and appeal to different kind of buyers. So let's get started. Thank you for joining us today, sir.
Thank you for having me over.
So since we're talking about plotted development, can you briefly tell us what plotted development is and how does it compare to residential apartments?
Traditionally, most people, when they think about residential, they think of having a plot of land and building on that, a ground structure or a ground plus one, ground plus two. That's how residential development took place. In US it's called single family lots. So whichever way you look at it, or in India it's known as a bungalow, technically. So that's the traditional way of a residential development. But in cities where land became very expensive, it's not really possible for someone to have a bungalow. So that's when you had gone vertical and you started having these apartment blocks or a condominiums as they're called abroad. So you're basically building a vertical sort of a building where there are multiple units for family occupation and usage. So the difference is only based on pricing and based on the location to the proximity it has to the CBD area of a city. So as you come closer to any CBD area in any city, the price is monstrous. Like in Bombay, for instance, a price in a zone 1 can even be 1,000 to 2,000 crores an acre. So it's not easy to have a bungalow. Okay. So as you go outskirts, then naturally the price drops. So the question is, do I be within the city precincts and go vertical? Just like the India's richest billionaire also went vertical? Or do you go far out and have a huge farmhouse sort of a thing, like you see in other cities? So there is no difference. It depends. So usually people can have a primary house within the city and a secondary home on the outskirts, or some people prefer to have even a primary home outside.
Correct. So, like you mentioned, some people have primary homes outside and some in the city, but mostly in cities like Bangalore and Noida, people have plotted development homes in the city, for example, Whitefield. But that's not the case in Bombay. So, do you think infrastructure plays a part there?
No, it's not. Yeah, infrastructure always plays a part in any development. But it's not so. See, when you look at a greater Noida, or whether you look at Whitefield, what you mentioned, at one time they were on the outskirts.
Correct.
So when they were developed as plots only. For example, in Bombay, you see the same plotted development in Khar and Juhu, don't you? They were developed as plots and bungalows came up. Later on, those plots became from the bungalows into high rises. Okay, so as a city expands, that suburb, which was once on the outskirt, starts coming into the city proper. So today you have in Whitefield, it has come in, and slowly those bungalows will disappear over time, and you will have the bungalows coming up in a place like Devanali or Dodaballapur. So it'll go into the outskirts.
Okay. So, while purchasing a plotted development land, what is one thing that a person should keep in mind?
See, the plotted development can be of two types. You can go and yourself buy a plot of land from someone, in which case you need to do far more due diligence. Or you can be buying a plot of land in a gated community where a developer has already come, taken 20, 30 acres, put a boundary wall, put a gate, maybe gives you some amenities in a clubhouse, makes the roads and everything. In there, your due diligence is much lesser, especially if the developer's credibility is high. Okay, so most people today are getting into the gated communities. Buying a plot of land on your own, you will have to see whether it is agricultural, non agricultural, whether you will get the approval, whether you will get all the amenities like power, drainage, water, sewage. So there are a lot of things to be considered. So most people prefer to go into a gated community and say that, okay, the developer is taking care of all of that and he's bringing it to my plot. And then those plots can be very small. If I go to Chennai, there are people who make plots of about 1200 square feet also, 30 by 40. Okay, and you can have large plots also combined. So those are plotted developments in a gated community. So most of the time when you're talking about plotted development today, it means it's in a gated community and there's a promoter or developer who is building it and promoting it.
So different development bodies from different states such as DDA, LDA and SIDCO periodically conduct auctions for residential and mixed use plots. Is it a safer option than going to a private developer?
Government is always a safer option, isn't it? So definitely it's a safer option. Maybe sometimes you might have a delay in them developing the infrastructure because sometimes government bodies don't do it on a priority basis. But the title as well as the fact that it is coming from the government will make it a much safer investment to do. So I think it is a safer option, but it need not necessarily have the same amenities as a private developer might be doing on the site. But one of the big things about plotted development you all have to understand, and the viewers should understand, is you have to look whether your plot is agricultural or non-agricultural. Because today, even non agricultural land was always as plotted development, but today, even agricultural land is coming under plotted development. Because he's saying, I'm selling to you agricultural land, you might be able to have a farmer's license to buy the agricultural land, and I'll put a farmhouse where the FSI is very low. So you have all sorts of permutations and combinations in it. So every plotted development should not be viewed as he has done any. You have to ask the developer, is it a non-agricultural land you're selling? In which case the FSI is higher. In which case you can use it as a residential this thing. Whereas if you're buying farmland, you're actually supposed to do some farming there. Whether it's an orchard or whether it's a sort of a flowering bed or anything, you're supposed to do something there and you're supposed to be having a farmhouse, not a residential quarter as such. So these are subtle distinctions because I find now a lot of unscrupulous developers have started selling agricultural land as plotted development and gated communities. Whereas in the case of development bodies, you don't have that issue. It'll always be non agricultural. They will never sell you agricultural land, a DDA or LDA.
So people often buy agricultural land thinking it's cheaper with the hope that they can, with the hope that they can convert it into a non-agricultural land and get a hefty profit. Do you think that's logical?
It is logical if you can convert it. The $1 million question is it easy to convert? It's not. Because you have to go through a lot of hoops to convert it, and there are a lot of rules and regulations governing that. So I wouldn't ask anyone to speculate on that you buy agricultural land and think you'll convert it. If you buy agricultural land, you have a farmer's license, then actually do some farming, organic farming or hydroponics or whatever you want to do, and put a farmhouse, no problem. But don't gamble and on the fact that it'll turn into non-agricultural automatically after 5 years. No, it doesn't happen that way.
There has been a recent increase in number of established developers entering the plotted development segment, especially in the MMR. What, according to you, has propelled this growth?
See, there are two reasons why people enter into plotted development. One is you can fiddle around with the ticket size very easily. So, in a plotted development, sometimes a smaller plot can be sold for, say, 30, 40 lakhs, which is a very sweet spot for a typical premium investor, I call. He need not even be high net worth. So, you can have a lot of sales by fiddling around with the ticket size and the plot size and making people feel that, look, now you own a small piece of land and you can build on it slowly over time. So it's a very attractive proposition. So you go into the boondocks, you pick up a large parcel of land. You can make it agricultural, non-agricultural. You can leave it agricultural, and you say, "I'm selling plots of land, and I'm going to bring some sort of infrastructure there." It's a very attractive sort of a business to generate sales and to attract the middle section of investors also, if not the lower end. Whereas in a place like Chennai and Bangalore, they can even attract the lower end, where they're actually blue collar workers who buy these plots of land. So it can cuts across a lot of things. It need not always be a bungalow or villa size. The other is exactly the opposite, as I said, where you're taking a large bungalow and you're telling him like, look, it's a Spanish villa. It's a, I have the Italian theme out here. I have a Roman theme out there, and these are fancy villas which you buy for a few crores, and it's really gonna add to your status symbol.
So, who drives the demand? Is it the investor class or the end users?
Well, both will drive actually, because mostly it will be the end user, because initially, depending upon the ticket size and how you're marketing it, the end users are attracted. But whenever end users are attracted, there's also a class of investors who come up, who say that, can I do the sort of middleman, sort of a flipping over when the project is ready in all its grandeur? So I buy in at the initial stage and flip it at 5 years. But as of now, I think there'll be a majority of end users who are buying it rather than the investor class.
So, what does infrastructure play a bigger role in appreciation of my plot rather than the structure I build it with?
Yes, and infrastructure will play a bigger role than the physical form your bungalow might have, whether it is a Spanish villa or a Italian sort of a concept. No, agreed. So basically, if we have to look at it, where you should buy a plotted development, it either should have some natural beauty or climate advantage, that you like to be in that place because weather-wise it is great, or it's a natural beauty is there, it's a hilltop, it's a beachside, or it should be well infrastructured. That means you're far away from the city, but the connectivity is so good that you can come into the city in a couple of hours if necessary. Otherwise, you're quite okay to be at that distance because it's serene and quiet and away from the hustle and bustle. But it should be infrastructure, especially from the viewpoint of even things like your power, drainage, sewage, everything. The third aspect of it, does it have any significance? Some sites can have a religious significance. Like today, what we found, where people have been giving plotted lands at religious places of, because everybody goes on their pilgrimage to that, whichever religion. So there again, it will always remain important, because you're buying something, because there will always be a demand for people to come to that place. But if there is nothing, and somebody is trying to create a complete ballyhoo and hullabulla of and on a place, saying that, look, everybody is going to buy this place because I've created a fancy township and I've put fancy structures on it, there is a danger that it might take off or it might fail also. So this is something which one should consider.
Okay, thank you so much, sir, for joining us.
You're welcome.
That's a wrap for this episode of PropSutra. We hope this episode helped you break down the difference between residential apartments and plotted development. And if you have any questions, drop them in the comments and we'll take it up in the next podcast. And don't forget to press the like, share, and subscribe button. Thank you.